So who has been crucified? Is the white man on the cross or is the black man on the cross? Who are the two thieves on the left? Are these not the Chinese and the Americans? And the Africans are hanging at the center. What does that mean for us as Africans? And who are the Romans? Who are the Dutch? Who crucified Jesus? Are we not struggling right now under the Roman-Dutch concept? So has Jesus dropped from the cross? The answer is no. Jesus is still hanging on the cross.
This is the Hustler's Corner.
For those who celebrated but Good Friday, for those who don't celebrate it, Thokozani bogogo bomkhulu, ngicela ukubingelela abantu abadala nekikopa hudumedisa babang le babang wherever you guys are all over the world. Sons and daughters of this incredible continent. Whatever continent you're in right now, just feel that the ancestors from back home are missing you. And they're saying to you, when are you coming back home to visit? And those who haven't visited the continent, you are depriving yourself of an amazing, life-changing experience. We'd like to welcome you to the Hustler's Corner. Bati Good Friday is a Christian holiday commemorating the crucifixion of Jesus and his death at the Calvary. It is observed during Holy Week as part of the Paschal Triduum. It is also known as Holy Friday, Great and Holy Friday, and Holy and Great Friday, and Black Friday. And because we are speaking from an African context, we would like to also break that down. Ladies and gents, I'm with Ikhrutman Lami, and today this is not a formal episode. We're having a glass of wine over a lot of issues. Nyabonga
Good. It's a great pleasure.
I'm humble.
It's always nice to be with you, by the way. I like the vibe around the community that you are building for the African child. And the great work. I was following your episodes in the US. Very, very interesting. And I wish we could actually... There's a trip coming up, Spoo. Maybe share this off the record. I got a Ngrutman Eastrand who wants us to get a 4x4 and move from Cape to Cairo, then check out all the cultural and indigenous centers as we are going along, and then do a coverage of all that. Oh. So immediately, the budgets are there and everything. We've just confirmed that. I'm signing up the contracts tomorrow. So immediately that happens, you might have to block off some 3-4 months.
We are in. We'll be shooting some episodes on the road.
Sibingelela bantu, sivunumbila, singathola bekithi isintu siyangena, and just experience Africa and say the story of Africa from our own perspective as the residents of the continent. But on the question, yes, that we are raising Easter, I've never looked at Easter from the Greco-Roman perspective, where it's Ishtar, which is a Greco-Roman goddess of fertility and etc. That's why you find all these rabbits that are around speaking of sex, then eggs, speaking of fertility. Then they make the children in Easter, and then the children will be born in December 25 or in the month of December. Then they would sacrifice those children. So the Roman Greco space is not actually, Easter is not actually a clean thing. It comes to us with a very complex quote-unquote pagan, totally out. There's no way you can be talking about Easter bunnies and Easter eggs and hot cross buns. Then you need to, if you go into each one of those components and find out. And this for me, by the way, is the way it gets interesting. Young people must research. And just do a Google. Easter bunnies, and Easter buns and Easter eggs. What is the history of these things? Just type it on a phone right now. You will find a totally different picture from what the church is celebrating as the death of Jesus. But should we then move over into the death of Jesus as being Passover or Easter? We can't do that without understanding the Israeli Hebrew background, which talks of a nation trapped in colonialism, in slavery, in Egypt, using the biblical text. Whether it is true or not, it's a conversation for another day. But the biblical text will tell us that Israel were locked up in Egypt. And then their God, spiritual intervention, says to Moses, let my people go. And when he comes into Egypt, he says, before you go, collect some money, offerings from the Egyptians. Just tell them we want some gold and silver so that we can worship our God in the wilderness. That was their payment for the 400 years of slavery they had gone through. And in the night, then kill a lamb. And after killing a lamb, then put the blood on your doorposts. Go inside the house, roast the thing, and eat, and prepare, and go. On the same night, God was busy killing the firstborns of the Egyptians. And in the morning, early morning, they left to depart. Now, if you look at that storyline, then we don't need to discuss Easter in the spiritual context. We need to discuss Easter in the political context. That actually Easter and Passover is a political liberation of a people that are stuck in a slave system. And if you can take that concept of Passover and move it to Africans, juxtaposing it with the resurrection of Jesus, are we going to be resurrected on Sunday? As Africans, free from the colonial budgets, free from the colonial health system, free from the colonial education systems, free from the colonial economy, free from the colonial political system. So you find that these are just celebrations that we are doing without necessarily actually appreciating the depth of the celebration itself. And I wish Christians would go back and ask, where are we now? We're in Egypt, on our own land. But we are slaves on our own land. So for me, Easter does not bring in the excitement and the euphoria of Jesus hanging on a cross, and Christians must feel sorry for that. It must actually raise in us a repatriation, a walking back of some sort, a living this to that, whether it is a mental walking, emotional walking, psychological walking, spiritual walking, political walking, but ideological walking away from Egypt. And beautiful part to our oppressors is that before we leave, we need payment for the years that you've abused us. Now, to me, that's theology. Because you cannot talk about liberation without restitution, reparations, and repayments. And the Easter concept for me, I don't even think a pinch of the ministers who are promoting the death and resurrection of Jesus understand the background of Passover. But should we decide to discuss it from the crucifixion of Jesus? Again, as a philosopher, I stand back and I look and I said, so who has been crucified? Is the white man on the cross or is the black man on the cross? Who are the two thieves on the left? Are these not the Chinese and the Americans? And the Africans are hanging at the center. What does that mean for us as Africans? And who are the Romans? Who are the Dutch? Who crucified Jesus? Are we not struggling right now under the Roman-Dutch concept? So has Jesus dropped from the cross? The answer is no. Jesus is still hanging on the cross with the two thieves who are robbing African people of their own resources. So, and pardon me, because this might actually throw you into the deep end. And this is my line of specialty in terms of theology. Yeah. So when it comes to interpretation, I actually feel that we are doing the text a disfavor by only looking at the cosmetic part of Jesus hung on the cross, he died, and he resurrected for us. But when you come back to it and say, how have we been crucified? Who has crucified us? Who is hanging on the cross with us? When are we going to go to be buried? Is there a resurrection? I see Africa being pushed into the dark continent, but I see the resurrection of a brand new morning when the African child is now waking up. The African Renaissance, the Pan-African movement, the grand movement that is now happening. So to us, Sunday is not a day after Saturday. Sunday to us is a length of time after a moment of crucifixion and burial of our culture and society into oblivion. Then early morning, there's a voice of the watcher shouting from the mountaintop, resurrect and awake and awake. And the African children begin to put aside the clothes of the night, the pajamas of the night, and they wake up and come out of the catacombs of being a forgotten nation, and they can begin to live again. So when you talk about Easter, for me, you move certain parts of my spirit in the real sense of understanding where the continent is and how mysteriously that is extrapolated and duly interpreted and duplicated in the biblical narrative of what you call Passover and Easter.
If there's a message you'd like to say to younger guys right now who are saying Good Friday, and not only just all Christians, what would you like to say to them?
The people who crucified you on the cross will never take you down from it. They actually want to make sure that before sunset we are dead. So we need to make a plan as African children to say, on this cross, we need to start thinking, how do we come off this cross? Because we are still alive. We are still alive. So we need to have a conversation that speaks of resuscitation, pulling each other off the chains of economic oppression, political oppression, ideological oppression, and pulling each other down before we die. But should it be that some have already died, we have good news that the season we are now living in is the season of a resurrection. So the message I have, if you find a brother, you find a sister who is on the cross, come on, stop a little bit. Don't shout and say, crucify him, crucify him, crucify him. And then you do the PhD situation of pull him down. When you hear that a brother is hanging on the cross, when you hear that a brother has been crucified on the cross, I think we cannot go there also with hammers and extra nails to make sure God is and I think for the colonial mindset, that sounds very, very appetizing. When a brother is in trouble, finish him off. But for me, pass over. Then it becomes deep. Pass over. Don't get indulged in the anger of the institutions and the systems. Cross over. When you see your blood, when you see your blood on my doorpost, when you see your likeness on my doorpost, when you see yourself in my melanin, and if you can see yourself, you cannot take a hammer also and crucify me. Pass over. Come on, brother. Pass over. And the least you can do is to help me come down from this cruel cross where I've been crucified to die.
Upuma Soweto TV, and I think you went there to share with South Africans and with Sowetans the message of this weekend. As people will be traveling home, people will be traveling to different religious denominations all over the country. And you were telling me that you had a great interview.
Oh, yeah.
How was the interview and what was that about? And I'd also like to send a shout out to Soweto TV. I missed you guys. And shout outs for having Ikhrutman, Itaima, Ilida to our philosopher, our inspiration on your platform. So I'd like to know how the interview went. How did it go?
Very, very interesting. And I think it's high time also media spaces. And why I like Yusufu is the candid, honest, and gloves off. It is what it is. Now, Bachele Krutman, no, we're going to be promoting Easter. So figured that, but you know, we're looking at the difference between spirituality and Christianity. And honestly, it was not fair. He was neither prepared for the conversation. So, into analysis...
Who your co-guest?
Yeah, Umfundisi Sono, yes. Bishop Sono.
Oh, Bishop.
Yeah, Bishop Sono. And a wonderful.
I haven't visited Grace in a long time.
I've lived with the old man for forever. From as long as since my video, I watch your celebration. I mean, the concerts that have been handled there. The death of Lundi, the young man, actually, I conducted the service from his congregation there, from his auditorium. So I share good history. And I think many people were hoping that I would be coming there with Nob Kiris.
I just said a funny mindset. I just thought of a Bishop Sono's voice and Grootman Mahuta's voice. It's just a funny thought, but it's just all loud.
So we have a good, and I think something we must also learn as young people is what I want to call the responsibility of information. You are lucky in your generation, Bosbu, number 2000, in Tuanazen, we have such an overload of information. And you forget what Amakrutman, in the 1940s, 1950s, 60s. Abanye bathenga ama cell phone abizayo ama Samsung akwazi no access internet ne WhatsApp. And you have all this information on the internet and Googles and etc. When you're approaching the old people, I don't think it's always about the killer shot of butchering and always trying to show superiority. I think there's a place for respect. There's a place for dignity. There's a place for holding back. And I want to give you a new term today, responsibility of information.
Responsibility of information.
Noma uyazi lento ukwazi ukuba uMagriza akayiqondi lento. Akukunikeza igunya mfethu ukuthi usiyamdelela. Usiyamnyatsa ngoba nangu wena ubuya eVal Tech, ubuye eUJ. You have two years at Wits. Usufundile kama anthropology nama epistemology nama hegemony. Usiyangena kuMagriza ngapha usuzama ukuba clever. I think there's no space for that in our African culture. And for your own information, it's the sweat of Labo Gogo which has given you that opportunity. And when you walk back to them, the least you can do is to respect. So I sat there actually and I felt, Pastor Son is 10 years older than me. Recruitment. He's older. I'm 52, 53, he's 62, 63. So it's 10 years apart. And in my own space, I will not take my knife and panga on any good day and decide I'm going to chop this. But let into analyze about 1967, 1970. Because I don't think some of them are doing it from understanding. It has become a hobby to become a pastor. It has become a hobby. Kenya. Jesus. Saying Jesus. What is Jesus? But oh Jesus. In donors as a Kenya that if you are Jesus, Easter in fact, we are crucifying you. But we want to crucify you. You can check the thing on your social media space. But we are going to crucify you. After crucifying you, we want you to resurrect on Sunday. And the old man, he called the police. At the community wants to butcher him. But this is the kind of mischief I'm talking about. Where you find, I want to say, Fagama Kandel and clock. Say lighty candle. Under this, trying to make yourself sorrowful. I want to say, Daddy, Tombes about Mary. About God. In front of an idol. And this kind of swallow the plastic with the bread idea, which we spoke about the last time, needs to be corrected. Because even the religious institutions needed to find out what is the context, what is the content, and what is the practice. But when you bundle everything together and then you confuse the common people with traditions and occult practices that have nothing to do with the Bible and our culture, then I get offended.
So the topic was spirituality versus
religion
or Christianity.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And then how does Easter play itself into that space? And
how did the conversation go?
No, we ended up taking a gentle landing strip where he spoke about the Christian faith and what is the expectation of Easter. And I opted rather to speak about the background of the Easter itself in its historicity. So I went on for the politics of Easter, the politics of Passover. And but we walked out of the room still with a good handshake, and it was quite warm. We even took a picture together and big smiles. It was nice.
No, that's lovely. I think the elephant in the room right now, and I'm glad that you've been spending some time in Zimbabwe. We've once again made world news, South Africa and Zimbabwe. Al Jazeera, just broke a story about the Gold Rush documentary, and I'd like to hear your opinions on it.
I'll break into two. Al Jazeera. But if I knew who they were and what they represent and where they are coming from, I'll start talking. I want to challenge Al Jazeera to say, go back to Middle East and look at the number of Arabs who are having Senegalese, Kenyans, Libyans, Ugandans as slaves in their houses in 2023. That's subject number one. Subject number two, Al Jazeera, go back again and find out how many of these people are being moved. How many of these people are being moved into the Middle East and they're actually having to wake up in the morning and find out their kidneys have been harvested. And are you saying...
Can you please just say I apologize for disturbing your train of thought, sir. GWYZA is one of our Kwaito music pioneers.
Akufaka two lines. Faka two lines.
Mina ngishela phansi ngiyazikhupukela. Ngithi ngiyakwenzela mama.
Uzwa ke.
Vala la uvule la.
Uzwa ke.
Hamba la uzini. Satala la satala.
Happy Easter. Happy Easter GWYZA butwa.
I'm so happy to see you.
Ngicela ukhulunta abantu. Good Friday.
Ngicela ngibone lento. Ngiyanibona abafethu ngiyanginspire.
Ngiyabonga ngiyabonga. Ngithi azwakala just ukhulunta abantu. Ngisho nabo bazojabula ukukubona yabona. Sure. He's quite a legend.
Are we expecting anything from you?
He's one of the people that are a reason of me getting into the music industry. Not only myself, my generation.
Wow.
Yeah, he's part of the famous TKZ.
Yes, TKZ
family.
Yeah.
And his name is GWYZA. He's a legend in Kwaito music. What is big right now, which is Amapiano, comes from Kwaito.
Okay.
And they are the greatest South African Kwaito group of all time.
Oh, you know,
so I just wanted young people to know that. They must know their history.
Umlete on one of the shows. And let's do the history of Kwaito and the transitions.
Yeah.
Because I calling a Kwaito na Mapiano. Ndio likala na upata.
Yes.
Then, when the Africans were listening to the jazz, Manhattan, for example, in all these groups, Bo Sticks, Bo Banzi Bangani, Bo Brayu, Bo Winston Mankungu Ngozi, Bo Stompy Bananas, and when they were hearing the jazz in the West, and they duplicated it, out of the Patapata story came in the Mapanzulas. And from Mapanzulas, then came in Makrutman, Kwaito. From Kwaito now, Kong, Nani, we're now moving over into Mapiano. And so we actually see a dynamic.
Yeah.
The movement of music and social interpretation when it comes to art form. I follow quite a bit.
Yes. You know.
And I want you to speak to South Africans. South Africans have not seen you in a while. But just earring us, Good Friday, Fandag. Just Bakrunta, Nintona Zetis Shai Piano. Just a beautiful message from Mikrutmane, who's a Kwaito legend.
Yo, Bafetu, I'm so humbled. Thank you for the privilege and the embrace, Buddha. It's such a privilege to be part of the South African musical journey and see the different stages and transitions like you were talking about. Lapa, Abu Patapata. I wasn't there. You know, but at least manje ngikhona ngibobonile abo Freddy Kwala, babonile abo Brenda Fassie, abo Plondi, kwangena abo Sinyaka, abo Kamazu, kwangena abo Spikiri, kwangena amakwaito abo Mashamplana, abo Mdu, natsangena, kwangena Nina, kwangena. So it's I think it's more than Mina as an artist or more than Wena as an artist. It's a movement and a growth and an evolution. Music is traveling through us. And we are just vessels in the moment. So what a blessing to have been part of that moment. And what a blessing to Okbugela, Food, Abanye, who are doing the same thing. And they're excelling now. These guys are independent. We were dependent on the structures that were subcultures and sub-industries of overseas companies. But linked on and now they have the power to do it, and they're reaping it. Bona for bona. It's a wonderful thing. And I hope GWYZA or in mina nyazi ukuthi it went to my head. And I pray and hope it does not go to your head, that you keep your momentum, that you keep sharing that love. And I'm so touched by you, Jens. It's a wonderful thing to be alive. Thank you so much, Bafetu. Sbuda nespanos chunayo, Fetu. You know, your evolution, Fetu. Abona mina ngikhala easy indaba ngikhuzuke kakhulu.
Vele ngacabanga uGesh, ngicabanga uMandoza, like I'm just getting emotional, you know.
Yeah, me too.
Bengizocula just phelela. Shodu Mandoza.
Siphelele ngithi mina abo orla bagcoke thina. Mangorla ngigcoka nina. Mangaphinde basithinte emhlabathini wakithi. Awumntana kithi. Ningenzi ngathi anisazi masibona nina nisibona sibhampanani sikontiri. But GWYZA kanti sichafe ku. Ngithi kanti wena ugcine kuphi? Ngoba uyazi ngiphume Southwestern Township. Phansi amadusty. Ah!
But we're here today.
Oh, why?
Intro. We really love this place.
We're here today to enjoy this beautiful place, laced with beautiful people and voices and everything, you know? It's the God's connection on this joint. Can nobody touch us or fade us? It's 1998. 1999 is gonna make the year we shine.
Give it to me. And then you start with these chants.
I wanna just doing that.
Music is playing, and that's what we say.
Hey, we really love it, place.
Yes.
Well, here we go. I gotta go another show. You know I got to make dough. But the world just seems to be too low to get under, too high to get over, yeah. And we're stuck in the middle of it. You better make the best of it. And the only way to survive is just to make the profit. I'm off it.
Rest in peace, my friend. Happy Good Friday,
Thank you for the embrace. South Africa, we love you. You ask me if I've got stuff. Yeah, no, there's stuff coming out. And like, it's
sorry.
Wow.
He's a legend. I had to give him his flowers.
That's so soft.
Yeah.
That's soft.
And I got emotional because I love him with all my heart.
No, it's a...
Yeah, he inspired me. Him, Kabelo, Tukulo, Zwai, Aboloiso, and Abu Macheo, rest in peace, Macheo. They inspired my generation to get into Kwaito music. And, you know, we grew with this thing. We did house music. Yeah, he's my hero. Their first CD, TKZ, it was an EP, was my first CD that I bought at Varsity at Vetstech. As a student,
wow.
as an up-and-coming DJ, as an unknown DJ student.
Now. Archive,
yeah. And sorry for disturbing the moment, but it's as a broadcaster, when I see such moments, you can never repeat them. Just jump on them and let the audience experience magic.
Wonderful.
Thank you, sir. So I come from radio background, and I remember there was one moment, a young man by the name of Kabelo Tibedi. He jumped into the South African Home Affairs. He was hurtful that they were not giving him his ID document. And as soon as he got in there with a gun,
I remember that guy.
He got people hostage, yes. And he asked them to call YFM. And he asked them to call DJ Smooth from YFM, and he must be put on air. I was doing the afternoon drive time show there. And then I had to play negotiator, because they told me that he had people hostage and he had a gun at Home Affairs. And he asked to call me. And at the time, I had the biggest afternoon drive show in Johannesburg. And I had to play negotiator, and then only later to find out that it was a toy gun. It was a young person frustrated by the system that he can't do anything because the government doesn't want to give him his ID, and it had gone on for years.
Yeah.
And he was just frustrated.
I remember the story, you could not go to school, you had some challenges and ID stories.
Yeah. So it's one of those moments on radio that I didn't plan for when I was coming to do my radio show.
But it happened.
But when such moments happen, it's like you imagine all the broadcasters all over the world that were on air when the 9/11 towers collapsed.
Yeah. And all of a sudden the script is like...
everything changes.
You know, and start saying something different. You pull up your wits and everything together. Yeah, beautiful.
So I really had to honor the brother and give him his flowers. And I'd missed him. I'm very happy to see him. Now let's continue with the conversation. We're talking about Al Jazeera without you losing your train of thought. Let me fill you up.
Just a minute. Just a minute.
Some water? Okay. Thank you, sir.
Al Jazeera, I was saying their conversation needs to start at home, where they can harvest the chaos that we've seen happening in the Middle East, which they are silent about and they're mute about. And you want to run into Zimbabwe. And instead of blackmailing the Zimbabwean government, Al Jazeera has actually worked immensely to expose the colonial system and the theft of African resources in an unproportionate way. Because from the time these colonialists came into space, for 400 years, they've been doing this shenanigan stuff under the table. The first episode sought to earmark Hubert Angel and black people as being smugglers of gold. The second episode changes the thing. SASFIM, whatever in South Africa, ABSA, are now implicated as being funders of dirty money, corrupt money, that is smuggling gold out of South Africa. Now, this speaks to South Africa now, as a government and as a banking system. And 4 white people have been identified, Macmillan and the other cash guy, who is from the Zimbabwean space, who used to be an advisor to the Reserve Bank, as implicated in the whole gold. And they've run out of the country, actually. They've run away from the country. They're hiding either here or somewhere outside there. So we have not been aware, as a country, of the real mafias are not black people. Because you cannot even sit down with me here and tell me about career of a gold bar between the producer of the gold bar and the buyer of the gold bar, and he's asking for 2% to transport the gold across the hands. I want to know what's happened to the 98%. Because this guy is literally a vessel in a big cartel. And to make it even better, Arab United Emirates, India, and Europe, you have a man in your country, not one, not two, dozen men in your country, who walk up to the bank and withdraw 360 million, put it in briefcase from your bank in Europe, hire private jets from Europe, from Arab Emirates, and from India, into South Africa, get ships and boats, smuggle the money into the country. Who has dirty money? Who is corrupt? Where is the problem really? Are we going to be looking at the people who have the resource as the corrupt people in how they send these things out? Or we're going to be looking at the people who are responsible for creating the environment where the corruption is happening? So I'm actually excited about the GWYZA report, to say the least. Because for me, I never knew that so much stuff was happening under the carpet and right underneath our nose, and we're not aware of it. The only thing missing on the GWYZA report is the honesty and truthfulness of trying to blackmail that the honorable president is implicated in the deal. Now we understand from the programs that it is the immigration officers who are sitting on the scanners, who are given money behind doors to allow the gold to pass through. Now, where does the president come into that space? Yes, it speaks to him in terms of putting better institutional systems to make sure that even at the border, there's a watcher behind a watcher behind a watch, so that these things don't happen. But when such a thing just bursts into the air and you want to say the government of Zimbabwe is involved in this, corruption is corruption. The stealing of the coal in Mpumalanga, which has resulted in load shedding and etc., you cannot go around and implicate someone who is out of space when the real people who are making the loot at the bottom can be identified. So I'm actually excited to know that corruption and gold mafias is not you and Ms. Boo. They are bankers who are sitting on millions of dollars.
Did you see how many banks were implicated in South Africa?
They implemented about 3 or 4.
I think it's a little,
Standard Bank,
a little bit more than that.
If their research had been thorough, I would bet to guarantee that much of the gold assets that are sitting on the South African Stock Exchange is actually gold from Zimbabwe and from Congo and Angola. Ask me why.
Why?
Because your gold in Carltonville is now at 15 kilometers under the ground. It's unminable. The cost of pulling out gold in South Africa is impossible. That's why you have all these gold dumps that are lying around. Whereas these are the countries I'm mentioning, Zimbabwe, Congo, and Angola, we're still doing alluvial gold. We have not even started mining.
What is alluvial gold?
You just go to a river and take a pen and you sieve like this.
Oh, what they would call...
and open cast mining sort of thing.
Yeah. What do they call them? Damn it. Yeah, but
so the gold rush...
Auction will call it like I'm a leftover.
Yeah.
That's so cool. My chips, my fish cry. It's not really chips, but it's like the leftovers.
What remained out of the fish.
Yeah.
So you find that in Zim and some of these countries where we are just starting to mine, between me and you, we are where South Africa was in the 1930s. in the 1940s, where there was gold rush in South Africa, where basically Johannesburg, all the dumps you see are telling you that there was a time where actually gold was found lying around this whole space of Midrand, East Rand, West Rand, so that it was up. And by the time you start going down into the ground, then the cost of production started going up also. So I beg to be corrected if there's someone with information out there from the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, which is across the road. If they can be truthful to tell me that the gold that they are declaring as South African gold, can they be honest that all that gold is purely South African gold? I beg to differ. If not a quarter or half of that gold, it is gold that is smuggled through South Africa. So South Africa has actually become a smuggling venue. You bring your gold from the southern region, they put it in the South African refinery place, they burn it up, and they put a South African stamp and say, this is South African gold. But you look at it carefully, it is actually not South African gold. So the whole issue of borders for me, economically doesn't make sense. Because South Africa right now is benefiting from the Zimbabwean and Congo gold where there is war, as much as Rwanda is benefiting from the war that is in Congo. Because people then dig up their diamonds, run to Rwanda, sell the diamonds. The Rwanda government then makes the money, build up the infrastructure. Rwanda is the most economic and most developing. But you're asking, where are you getting this money? If you get into the depth of it, you might find out that Congo is actually the backbone of the Rwanda economy. So is Kenya. So is Uganda. Because Congo remains the richest country on the entire African continent.
Right now?
Ever. Congo is the richest. What you call the Berlin Conference. Go and Google it.
Yeah, the Berlin Conference.
It's not the Berlin Conference.
Where they got together and they decided how they were going to split up Africa amongst themselves.
It's not Berlin Conference. Ask me what it was.
What was it?
It was a Congo Conference. The subject,
Since then?
The subject matter of the Berlin Conference was not Africa. It was Congo.
So Congo has been the richest since then?
Congo has been the richest. When it comes to your iPhones and etc., Congo produce the cobalt and etc. Congo is unparalleled to any other African country.
But in the Berlin Conference, 1884 to 1885, also known as the Congo Conference,
there you go.
or West Africa Conference, met on 15th of November 1884 and after an adjournment concluded on the 26th of February 1885 with the signature of a General Act regulating the European colonization and trade in Africa during the new imperialism period. The conference was organized by Otto von Bismarck, the first Chancellor of Germany, at the request of King Leopold II.
There you go. And you go back and find out what Leopold did. 25 million people killed in Congo, hands chopped off, and chocolate bars made in the form of hands. And the Belgians will be eating chocolates to celebrate the death of the Africans.
Thank you to Dr. Lwazilu Shaba. He touches on that on his interview on SAFM. Guys, Google it. Dr. Lwazilu Shaba on SAFM. When I think he was trending at the time a few years ago, just before the COVID-19 lockdowns. And he was asked about some of the statements that he had made about Hitler. And then he went on to dig in deeper into the conversation. He broadened it. And then he started speaking about the atrocities that happened there and how many people's hands were chopped.
When I get into the atrocities of the European and colonial system, particularly the slave trade and the Congo genocide, I actually get upset. I might end up saying things here that will get your podcast actually sanctioned on the international market. Ask me why.
Why?
Because you cannot have 2 million Jews who die in Germany and you coin up words, anti-Semitism, anti-what, to protect the Jews. And you look over your shoulder, you have more than 100 million blacks who have died and have been killed. And there's no one who has come up with the concept of anti-black. And Jews are allowed to celebrate. And if you say anything against the Jews, then you are labeled as anti-Semitic.
But can't black people do the same thing?
We don't have control over the system that narrates this story so that we can actually begin to say, you cannot say to me 2 million Jews, whether it is true or it is exaggerated. That's a conversation for another day. But 2 million Jews die Hitler is the most horrible man. Leopold kills 20 million Africans, and he's still not the most worst man that ever lived. Can you process that? Hitler kills 2 million white people. He's the most evil man that ever lived. Leopold kills 20 million Africans. He still does not appear on the list of the most wicked people that ever lived on the earth. There must be something wrong with this narrative. Totally something wrong with that narrative. It can be right by day, by night, by numbers, by mathematics, by ethnography. It cannot be right. That the whole world watches the massacre of black people and says nothing. And we want to call up holidays over the death of 2 million Jews, as if it is the worst disaster that ever happened on the face of the earth was the death of 2 million white people. There must be something wrong with our language, unless maybe I'm crazy. But from mathematics, I think there's disparity right there. That someone is not being honest about the authenticity of history and the dignity of human life. And if this is true, that 2 million Jews are much more important than 20 million Africans, then maybe we're on the wrong continent, where value of human life must be equal.
A lot of people are saying...
I'm sorry for being emotional.
A lot of people are saying the fall of the American dollar is here. Your opinions on BRICS? Saudi Arabia just announced, Saudi Arabia, I'd say maybe it's on the fence for lack of a better word. We've just heard Mexico has just announced to be joining BRICS, which is Brazil, Russia, India, South Africa and China. We've seen a lot of images lately of Xi Jinping with Mr. Putin. And there was just a conference here in South Africa, I think it was about a week ago. And I had some interesting statements from Mr. Julius Malema as well, saying there will not be any Putin that will be arrested here. The ICC, the International Criminal Court, are hypocrites. What are your opinions?
Here is the American dollar. Here is a buyer. Here is a seller. The American dollar becomes the middleman between the transactions. And they've enjoyed this in terms of trade. They've enjoyed this in terms of oil, that all international products were earmarked and benchmarked in the American dollar. So Americans did not even need to become part of the deal. But because your transactions are based on their dollar, they were going to print their money to facilitate for the transaction. Without being there, the Reserve Bank of America would get a profit.
So that's what made the dollar powerful over the past decades.
So now the whole idea is happening that move this thing away. You want my gold, I want your silver. End of deal. Take what you want, I take what I want. And the American dollar is going aside. And the arrogance of the Americans, the bulliness of the Americans. Let me even throw it on the west side. America right now comes to Tanzania, comes to Ghana, comes to Zambia with 16 million. And guess what? 16 million only for Zambia. The 16 million, ask me what is it for?
What is it for?
For human rights. Across the river, China and Russia coming to South Africa, ask me for what?
For what?
For a military training and skills sharing of security. So the Americans are more interested in a transgender, homosexual agenda around the world. They will invest their money and give you money to protect human rights. Russia and China are coming with weapons and militarization strategies so that we can protect ourselves. So I want to say this very loud and clear to the Americans. Continue on your transgender agenda. Stay there. Leave us to do politics on the other side. Because what we need right now is not a minority human rights activation. What we need is a societal transformation. And for you as Americans to think that we really envy that when you have an anti-lesbian, anti-gay, LGBT principle, then tourists would drop. Let me correct that once and for all, Sbu. And cut and clip this, and it must be loud and clear. Are you saying to me that all the tourists are gay? And when you hear that this is a non-gay zone, tourism will suffer? Question number one. Question number two. Are you saying that we don't have a right to expressing ourselves as Africans? Question number three. If democracy means majority rules and majority votes against a principle, then why won't you allow that to become law? Are you saying the minority must manage the majority, or the majority must manage the minority? Then if that whole ideology is wrong, then take democracy in a nice black dustbin bag and throw it outside. Because what you are telling us is by the people, for the people, with the people, and all those slogans you hear, what democracy represents. If we are 10 in the room and 9 people say no, and one person says yes, democracy says you go with the majority. So if we say we want to make Africa democratic, and the demographics of our democracy says no, then why do you philosophically want to manipulate the will of the majority to favor the will of the minority? Then this is where it really gets confusing to me. Because you're selling me one thing on one. I understand this democracy because it is based on the principle 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. When it comes to practice, no, you can't practice it like that. Then what do you want? Do you want democracy? You want anarchy? You want indigenous governance systems? You want meritocracy? Maybe let's find another way of governing ourselves. But the ideology of democracy being founded on majority rule does not count. Because the rule that runs the South African constitution right now is not majority count, but minority count. I'm sorry to make it philosophical.
I'll throw in Uganda in the equation. It's waiting to be signed is it in Parliament or the President?
Yeah.
I think it's waiting for the President.
Same with Ghana also.
Is it with Ghana also? I saw Kamala Harris say with the President.
Yeah.
So I'm just throwing it into the equation since the line of your conversation is there.
The Uganda conversation, I like what Museveni presented, which also Ruto presented. Same word for word, what Emerson Mnangagwa presented, and ultimately what Museveni is also saying. That we have bigger issues to be worried about as Africans. Right now, we're looking at, I like what you're doing, unemployment, housing issues, and etc. For us to begin to, these for me it's like arguing who gets the cherry on the cake when we have not had the basic meal as Africans. We're now arguing about the frivolous extras of a well-survived society who wants to explore alternative lifestyles. When right now the basics of lifestyles have not been considered. I will go on record for being on your show and saying it loud and clear without mixing words. Put 100 people on an island and lock them away from everybody. Put 100 people on an island who are heterosexual. Those are homosexual. Come back after 50 or 20 or 30 years. On that island, you'll find graves with no living being there. On this island, you'll find 10,000 people growing and exploring and moving. So, having said that, we as a society, particularly as African society, we also as traditional people have a right to our self-preservation and continuity as a people. Alternative lifestyles must be practiced where they must be practiced, but the main agenda of societal drive must be left to the right, because even those that are on the left come from the right. I don't know if that makes sense to you.
I understand. But a lot of people can be saying this is a human rights issue. I mean, even EFF marched and said we can't keep quiet and be seeing a human rights issue happen in Uganda and we do nothing about it. Although you find a lot of Ugandans, even online on the internet, saying Museveni is making decisions that are based on godly principles.
Between me and you, when I went to court, by the way, in South Africa here, for having passed a comment on the same-sex marriage issue, which did not end up well. And I don't want maybe to drag away from what we're going to be doing. But the conversation that we had for the same-sex marriages was very tricky for me, because it did not seek to address the core issue. Are we saying this is what the people want? Or are we saying this is what the international community wants? Point number one. Point number two, in the event that I decide as a heterosexual that I want to bring up my children in a heterosexual way, why does the homosexual want to stand on the path of my own children and how I want to institutionalize them, and then pollute them with what they want? If you want to pollute these children, make your own. Why come to the heterosexual and then dictate the ways of the homosexual? And so who has got the right this time? Are you saying the rights rely with the homosexual, or the rights rely with the heterosexual? The balance needs to be found right there, that every citizen has got the right to life and decide how they want to run their lives and how they want to bring up their children, etc. And so ultimately we might end up with a new Urania.
But exactly,
We might end up with a new Urania.
But why does it bother you, though, how they want to run their lives?
I'm not bothered, as long as how they want to run their lives does not end up running my children's lives. I wonder, that makes sense?
I understand.
So let's, in that case then, let's do an Urania. Let's create a state where this can happen there. And those who want to live in this other space, they can move into that space. And we are free to choose to change.
It's a very deeper conversation. But and also especially
and we're giving it the time it demands. We're giving it the depth of thought that it demands. So that in the midst of just saying human rights, we don't become emotional over protect gay rights, protect heterosexual rights. Because when you protect homosexual rights, you also need to become respectful of the heterosexual. And when you're promoting heterosexual, you also need to protect the homosexual. But at the end of the day, is who wants to live in which space, and how do you now interact these two communities together that are seemingly opposite in terms of mindset.
BRICS
is a good thing. Kill the American dollar. We're tired of this. Actually, I want to do a program, Sbu. No, I want to, no, Sbu.
But you let it die.
No. Tati camera, mchana. Tati camera, mchana. Tati camera. I am holding $10 in my hand right here, and follow me carefully.
Okay.
You just take a picture on this one. I don't think
you've got a moving camera. Yeah, come, let's go.
Come, John. Whoever comes to this restaurant 2-3 days from now, you will find that we've done something here. And I am personally getting involved in this. I'm personally getting involved in this project. It will happen in our lifetime. Arrogance of the Americans has to come to an end. We are not your slaves. Deep slave trade is a long time past, not now. Yeah, you are I am conducting a personal funeral for the American dollar, and I will put an RIP right here. There. Whoever comes here after we are going, they will find 10 American dollars. We are tired of being bullied. We are tired of being bullied and having our economies being reviewed as second-class economies. And
Let's continue.
You come to me, you want to buy gold, and then you give me papers in exchange for gold. And then you call that business. No, it must be value for value. So you want to come and buy stuff here, it's fine. How much do you want? It's for 60 million or 60 billion. It's good. I must go to New York and get value for what you have bought for me here. That means I can get land in America. I can get an industry in America. I can buy a company in America. I can buy stocks in America, so that the value of which you have taken away is not replaced by a bunch of frivolous photocopied pieces of paper. And right now the economy is running on the false idea of Nixon, who removed the American dollar from being gold-based to being paper-based. So Americans don't need any backup for their economy. All they're going to go to a photocopying machine and photocopy more papers.
And they just keep on printing it.
And fill up boxes.
And that's how it's lost its value over the decades, right?
True that.
It's not worth the paper.
The Russia, China, yen, etc. petrospace creates a new ballgame. I said it the other day that there's a new table being set up right across the American space. But unfortunately, Americans are not invited to the table.
With Saudi Arabia joining the conversation, it's over for America.
I am telling you the truth. This is for free. If you have money in the banks right now, South Africans, if you have US dollars anywhere, I want to suggest to you in the next 1 year, hear it from me. Don't guess it. Take your money away from the bank. Buy assets. Buy a house. Buy something that is outside, that appreciates.
Ekasi Noble Property Development. 079-275-8821.
Buy something. Because I left Zimbabwe when the exchange rate was 1 American dollar to 18 Zimbabwe dollars. Last year when I left South Africa to go back to Zim, it was 1 rand to 18 American dollars. And I packed my bags and I left. You will walk up to the bank one day with your 22,000, 150,000. When it is rated in American dollars, you'll wake up to discover that you have 35,000 left. Because you kept your money in paper. Paper does not grow. It grows on 2 to 3, 4%, 6% if you're lucky. But assets
and gold.
If you can,
do you think it's got anything to do with this time that we're going through? That the world media would exaggerate the Zimbabwean gold rush story?
It is happening on time. Because America built its civilization on the gold rush in America. South Africa, you'll be foolish as South Africans to laugh at Zimbabwe. Because Johannesburg, Sophiatown, Kimberley was built on gold and diamond rush. And when you hear that there's a gold rush in Congo and in Zimbabwe, you must know that civilization, development, investments are moving in that space. And I wish the South African government can begin to see that the advantage of the gold rush next door puts value to them. Lesotho supplies water here.
Congratulations on the new gold coins.
Yeah,
I would like for you to also touch on them. And what does that mean?
It means now that I don't have to put my money in the bank. I have my 18,000, I buy my coin and I keep it in my bank. I make another 18,000, I buy my gold coin and I put it back. And the good news is that when the gold is now moving from 1,900 to 3,600, after the gold exchange is in place, that I bought this thing for 18,000, I now have 36,000. So it triples. If you don't have gold in China, don't worry. Buy a goat. Buy a goat, a burro goat. It will give birth to twins twice a year. So you buy one goat, you will have 5 end of the year. Next year, two times, you'll have 20. Move your money from paper. You will thank me later. So you will thank me later. We are going to be reaching a time right now in Zimbabwe where all the gold that was stolen by the Europeans is going to come back to Africa. Ask me how. Ask me how.
How?
When we sell you our maize, we sell you our flowers, We sell you our coal.
Yo.
We don't want some damn pieces of paper money in our accounts. Pay in gold. Bring it back from your reserves in London, in Lisbon, in New York, in Frankfurt, for your assets, the things that you want in Africa. And this is what... I saw that picture of white people sitting around a big table.
And us underneath the...
This is exactly what it means. That when the people at the bottom of the table
decide
just
to
stand
rise
up, the party is over.
It's over.
So if Africa right now can say, we are willing to sell you our oil, we don't want some pieces of paper. Gold. You want iron ore and manganese, Daphne. We don't want our payments in US dollars. We want bars of gold. You want our maize? Bars of gold. We want our flowers? Bars of gold. I wish Ramaphosa can be listening to what I'm saying right now.
Come on.
And stop talking.
Say it again.
Stop talking
say it
about
again,
interest rates.
Say it again.
Stop talking about the
And
banks.
that's the next conversation. Interest rate hikes in South Africa 2 weeks ago. Continue, sorry.
So we don't have to be promoting it. Hey, our rand is. You can't be promoting paper money right now in this day and age. You need to tell us, Ndati Ramaphosa, your rand is benchmarked on what? The platinum you're moving out of South Africa. Make a moratorium that all the payments of all exports must be paid in gold. And you can convert all those gold dumps that are in the east and the west rand. And the gold that the Europeans took away because they want your assets, they now need to bring it back to where it belongs. To me, that is justice. That's justice.
Interest rate hikes.
Interest rate hikes.
I know that we're in real estate, we're in property, and that's the conversation we've been speaking about. And 2 weeks ago, we've been dealt a very big blow. Some of us that are in property, but we do know this is for now temporarily. But yeah, it's going to be quite a bumpy ride to all property investors and homeowners out there. What does that mean to an ordinary layman in the streets?
It means that the Reserve Bank is being controlled from somewhere else, and they are not sensitive to the markets in which they are situated in. Firstly, all the banks are willing to give you money for perishable assets, such as cars, such as clothes, such as perfumes, and etc. And you walk up to the bank and you want 2 million bucks to buy a car, especially used. You can have a Lamborghini tomorrow, parked in front of you, which you must pay in 2 years with the interest and etc. For 2 million, we'll give you 2 million, give it back to us as 3 million. Walk up to the same bank tomorrow morning and say you want 2 million to invest in MOFAYA. You will write compositions from here to Vereeniging and spend 6 years trying to get 300,000 reinvestment in a business that will create money. Then you look around and say, are these banks interested in business or they're interested in slave trade? Because when it comes to you empowering me with money, I want to start up a studio company. You won't receive a cent. I want to improve my brand. You won't receive a cent. But say you want a car. And you want a house. Oh, a house. Then it's 25 years. How much is the house? It's 2 million. At the end of 25 years, you've paid 6 million.
5 million, 6 million.
So we begin to think, as we become financially literate, that interest rates are not the best way in which we can run our economy, because those interests are not based on genuine assets and our creation of money on the right that meets those interests. I would suggest anyone who wants to move into assets and into property management, do not invest like directly from your money to this side. Create a business on the side. Then the profits of that business allow them to service the loan within the bank. Because if you think you're going to be running it from your salary to your house directly, the day you lose your job, bazothathela umfazi mfethu, bakuthathela icar, bakuthathela indlu, ingane ziphume eHoughton ziyofunde Davidton. It's a mess, because the system is based on as long as you are employed, here are the assets that you have. Immediately this umbilical cord is cut, you drop from the 14th floor to the ground. Basi babuye kuseni uthi bafana laba bagqoka amajazi amnyama nama shades sibeme eminyango wathi sizilanda imoto. How do you run a life like that? So I would suggest that invest in assets. Cattle. A house is not an investment, by the way. It's a liability. It only becomes an asset when there are tenants inside.
Or it's a BNP or it's a lodge and it's making you money.
Or there's a business there and they're beginning to pay you back. Then it becomes an asset.
But as much as it's a liability, it's a better liability than most liabilities.
But it's a liability which is only viable as long as you're employed.
Yeah.
And you can service the
loan, the monthly loan.
For 25 years.
Payments. Hey.
Now, in our loud mouth, Ufuko Ngenes quality is 900,000. Ukawana no possum sebenzi. Imota wati nanzo. Indlu wati nanzo. Na kusa property nyana umuntu ya investor kuzona wati hawo mfethu. You are in arrears. So you fall flat to the ground. So the simpler way of starting life for me is homestead. 2 chickens, 3 chickens. 3 sheep, 4 sheep. 6 goats, 7 goats. 7 cows, 8 cows. As an investment. And manage the reproduction of these things. And then when they begin to get into the market every year and you are selling those, how much money are you having on the side? Then what do you do with this money now to begin to move into secondary investments? But if you take secondary investments with a primary salary, then you must become a loyalist to the system. And don't breathe. Don't talk. Put your tail between your legs because your whole life depends on how you behave.
Yo, let's get into the envelope of success. What is the envelope of success? The camera there, can you zoom him in there? He's going to illustrate the envelope of success. Okay, there's your camera there.
Okay. So the better kanjele envelope of success. For every voice, there's an invoice. I get paid for teaching this to professionals who are willing to pay me a couple of thousands. But I love you, my people, as Africans. I'll share this with you for free. I got this inspiration in 2004, and I will share this with you. So take a piece of paper and put a square on your piece of paper. I hope when the young man is editing, you can actually maybe just do a nice envelope and then place it as a cutaway.
Yeah.
We have John. Yeah, we make a change. Then we establish an animation. Ibe sexy. Yeah. So you put a line there and you put another line there. So then you end up with something looking like this. That looks like an envelope, literally. Then this is line number 1. This is line number 2. This is line number 3. This is line number 4. This is line number 5. And this is line number 6. Then you have 6 lines that create this kind of an envelope. And out of the 6 lines, then you have 4 triangles that are inside the 6 lines. That's triangle number A, triangle number B, triangle number C, and triangle number D. So now I want to unpack this, and I'll give you the stencil on the top side so that you can unpack it for yourself. Initially, this is actually what I might call a self-development tool. DJ. Self-development tool. How do you do a profile for yourself? How do you package yourself? Number 2, how do you package your family? Number 3, how do you package your business? It's a strategy. How do you package your community? 4, how do you package your country? 5, ultimately, the continent and the world at large. If I had a way of talking to the rest of the world on one big microphone, I would say all of us, we needed necklaces that had this envelope of success so that it becomes a brand on which we can look at every day to know what it is all about. So let me unpack it for you. Line number 1 speaks of first things first. When it comes to building of any society, when it comes to developing of any individual, when it comes to building of any family, we have seen families collapse. Why? Because we didn't do the first things first. Then ask for marriage after that. It's a disaster waiting to happen. You want to start buying a car before you receive your profits for it. It's a disaster waiting to happen. Number two, line number two, build solid foundations. This speaks of family foundations. This speaks of academic foundations. This speaks of relationships, creating solid networks. Because when all this stuff comes crumbling down, you need a base on which you can fall on. And if you get a job, for example, job, then DJ Sbu walks out of the picture and you don't have the qualifications, you've been working there for 8 years, you're a fool. Favor got you in. When you're inside, then, hey, fukuza mfethu, zabalaza, vali ikhala, imetrika iko, hamba kuma night school, valala, certificate awunayo, valala, valala. So that when the man who put you into space moves out of the picture, you don't move away with him because you don't have the base that supports where you are sitting. And many people undermine the value of family right there. And family becomes the basis. When everything collapses, you want a soft landing where you can come and sit at home and people who cannot judge you, people who will accept you, people who will be able to live with you, and life can go on. A man who can give you a trousers and give you a pair of shoes. And it's not an issue with Facebook. You need that base that supports you. Line number 3 speaks of understand your limitations. Because where your limitations are, that's where other people's abilities begin. Many of us who want to start ventures, we think that we're going to be all-rounders, that we're going to be doing everything from A to Z. You're lying to yourself. You don't know how to market. You don't know how this stuff works. You don't know how books work in terms of accounting. You don't know how transportation works. You don't know how legal issues and legal expectations work. So don't move into things that you don't know. Because when you get to court and you say, I did not know, it's not an excuse. So understand your limitations. This for me presents an opportunity of where do you want to develop into. So, number 1, first things first. Number 2, if a boy wants to sleep with you, show him an empty finger first and say, turu, 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 turu. And when he puts something there, all other doors can open. But if you start by opening here, and then we swell up here, and then you show the middle finger, you are swearing. And line number 4 speaks of have clear goals in mind. Where do you want to go?
That's 3.
That's number 4. One,
number 4,
first things first, build solid foundations, understand your limitations.
Yes.
Because that tells you of your network. Where do you need to plug into other people and to other organizations that can add value to what you're doing? You're doing very well in MOFAYA, but I bet you're not doing everything. You have learned now that, hey, when it comes to branding, I found 3 ideas. And there are boys who can go home, but fuck my mouse, but looking some color, but looking at everything. But try to do it yourself.
You can't.
So understand your limitations.
There's never an I in team.
Have clear goals in mind. What do you want to achieve? We say in philosophy, fools keep on going even after they have arrived. Because if you don't know where you're going to go past the bus stop.
Usashela kanidala uqonyiwe.
Ha, aye mfethu. Ubufuna i6 by 9 by what? Isifikile 9. Uzuyovuleka. Englek is giphani la. So have clear goals in mind, and these goals, by the way, are not written in stone. You can always extend them. But you need to celebrate yourself. When you have moved from where you were to a certain level, like in your space now, you deserve a party. For yourself. You look at where you're coming from, you look at where you are, and say, I have achieved this milestone. Boom! Put a peg there. Then set up new goals. You re-evolve this whole cycle again. To say, okay, now 4 becomes 1. So what must I need to start doing now? What kind of networks do I need and background? What are my limitations in my new goals? What are the new goals? So it's not written in, it can actually become a revolving cycle of success. Then number 5, learn to cope with success. And if you it got to my head. Sometimes you shoot so fast to the top that you miss some certain steps. And nature might teach you to come back again and walk slowly so that you learn to cope with success, because success can become intoxicating. Number 6, learn to cope with failure. Failure is never final. Success is never limited. The fact that you failed simply means that you have found one method that doesn't work. So go back again. And many of us, when we fall, we ask for a blanket. I only did to veil. It could be divorce, man. Pick up your bags. It could be bankruptcy. Pick up your bags. It could be a failed idea. Pick up your bags. It's not final. The man who created lights, he had 1,000 experiments. And every day when he made another experiment, I found one method that doesn't work. He went back again. The whole world today is bright from a man who did more than 1,000 experiments, because you learn how to cope with failure. Failure is a lesson. It's a class where you're perfecting yourself. So first things first, solid foundations, understand your limitations, have clear goals in mind, learn to cope with success, learn to cope with failure. A, look after your physical health. Health is wealth. Without good health, even the richest man is poor. B, look after your mental development. Grow your brains, because that's the biggest asset that you have. Brains will give you access to resources and ideas to make more money. C, have spirituality connection right on your top side. Because when all things come crumbling down, people become spiritual, and look for that basis. You don't need to wait for disaster to become spiritual. Develop it on your way up. And D, create a healthy social network system. So if you become too physical, you become a gym master. If you become too intellectual, you become a snob. If you become too spiritual, you end up staying on a roof of a house or on a mountain by yourself with no one to talk to. If you just become too social, you become as a gig and a cooler box man. The issue is not which one is which, but balancing your life between your physical health, your mental health, your spiritual health, and your social health. So first things first, build solid foundations, understand your limitations, clear goals in mind, learn to cope with success, learn to cope with failure, look after your health physically, look after your health mentally, look after your health spiritually, and have a healthy social life. I thank you.
I know that you are living here. You are going straight to JJ. Doctor.
Professor
JJ Tabane. We need a part 2.
Yeah. No, but it's always a joy. It's always a joy to be here. And we do these things, honestly, not because we're making money out of this. I think there's a passion in our heart to see the transformation of the continent, to see the mindset change of our young people, to see the regeneration of innovation, creativity, indigenous knowledge systems, people beginning to take over the system and own their narrative. And this is what keeps us, some of us awake, keeps us awake every night. What can I do for my continent? Not what can the continent do for me?
This is the art of storytelling based on African culture. If you can imagine, I can imagine here where we are in Sandton in Johannesburg, like 300 years ago? It was like trees. You know,
300 years ago. You figure up in 1992.
Yeah.
In Johannesburg, a wood meat. There was a bush between wood meat and kloof. Except for DBSA, right on top. DBSA on top, ne boulders up. It was literally a bush. If you remember, 92 when I arrived here, and the Shell garage on the freeway, there.
So, I knew you through Grootman Lam Umusa Tsao Pangela, Trevor Okdala. Grootman is our leader. He's always been a role model to me, a silent role model. Yama Grootman to make us Mara about Tumange Makamerin Nasema TV. So he actually introduced me to your teachings back then. And back then I was
Paul, man.
You remember.
Oh, rest in peace.
Rest in peace, my brother. Rest in peace, my brother.
Now to come back and bury him. I came back and bury him, yeah. Because the wonderful guy.
Grootman, Paul Poo, man. Yeah, and those are the people that set Joburg. They showed us life.
Yeah.
Who put Musa Pangela, introduced us to you. That's almost 20 years ago.
There we go.
Yeah. And it's beautiful to have seen your consistency over the years. And just your transparency in sharing your messages and what you're going through in your life. And it's always nice to see people like you who are willing to stand on what you believe in and you verbally express it on cameras. And I always see how much hate you get and how much love you get. And it's just mixed reactions. And it just says to people like us who are receiving that type of heat where we are, it's nothing compared
Can I give you a secret? Can I give you a secret?
Yeah.
When you're moving at 5 kilometers per hour, what is the resistance?
Comme si, comme ça.
5 kilometers per hour.
Yeah.
The wind.
Yeah.
So when you're moving at 50, the resistance?
50.
When you're moving at 160?
And then it goes
So
all
when
the way
you
up.
now move over to 300 kilometers per hour,
Yeah.
your eyebrows will...
Yeah.
the wind that you are driving into is equivalent to the speed you are moving into.
Yeah.
So I've taken a principle. When you have resistance, it's not resistance, it's movement.
But we must also mention that you've also evolved with the word.
Yeah.
And you've evolved with your spiritual knowledge over the years. You've never always believed in being this person that you are right now. Wisdom and just living this thing called life over the past 2-3 decades has molded you into being this man.
Correct.
And that's why I say that, because there's people who've been following you since back in those days. And me, I'm one of those people, by the way. And
Some
shout
of them
out-
are lost in my growth. But we are missing the old one. I said, go back into the videos, you'll find him there.
Yeah.
I've moved a bit, I've changed, I've learned, I've grown. And I've changed sizes of shoes. You know, I've changed my sizes of pens. And I also have changed the size of my brains.
And let's not leave alone the farmers of thought as we are closing the episode. Let's talk about farmers of thought and knowledge that a lot of people out there that can plug into as we are wrapping it up. I know you have to be with Dr. JJ Tabane.
It's for free, by the way.
It's still
Yeah, we still have
16.
time.
Yeah, we still have time.
Farmers of Thought
Another
is,
15 minutes.
Farmers of Thought is a free space. And maybe give me half of this year, maybe end of the year. By next year, I think me and you will start talking.
Okay.
Because I want to start moving Farmers of Thought now into proper institutions where we can take some learnerships from universities and technical colleges. We bridge them in terms of fusing their education in terms of innovation and application to the African space. You go to America, you study all these things, but when you come back here and tell me I'm a marketeer, I think I have something to say on how best you can take your degree and make it applicable on the ground. So I want to create like an incubation space where we unwash, learn to, yes, you got it, but bring it into the pot.
Yeah.
Let's indigenize it. And so we want to institutionalize Farmers of Thought so that we can begin to accredit young people, have graduations around the continent. And you don't graduate in my class, by the way. You must go and train another 10. And the other 10 will confer the degree on you that you have been a good teacher. So it's a whole different mold of education and sharing. So, but when the plan is ready, I should come back to you. You are younger. You have more energy than I have. I think things through sometimes. And when I think of what it takes to get it done,
Yeah.
I'm beginning to feel my knees getting a bit wobbly. So, but we share ideas. And if I can duplicate myself into 10, 15, 20, 30, 100 million people later, it is safe to die.
And what are you busy with right now? Are you based in Zimbabwe? Are you back in South Africa? Are you all over the world? Where are you?
I'm doing 1,000 things, but what I can share with you, I've never felt as happy as I am right now to build a hut where I was born. Behind the door. It was nothing. The whole place was like deserted. I figured out clean. And I saw the foundation of the Roundavel itself. And I put the Roundavel exactly where it was. I'm going to put my grandfather's house where it was and just restore the memory of my youth. And if you hear that Maponga J is dying, he can't talk, he can't walk. DJ Sbu, make a promise. Pick me by car, my brother. Drive me back to that hut. Put me behind that door.
We promise.
I want my departure to be on the same place with my arrival.
Is there any African significance to where and this is not only you. There's like hundreds and thousands and millions of Africans who just want to. The older they become, and they always say, "When I pass on, I just want to be taken back to where I was born."
There is. I think when you reach our age, we start looking for peace, and silence, and meaning, and depth. My umbilical cord is right on that ground. It all of a sudden connects me to the very ground that I'm sitting on. And that connection to where my grandfather and my father lived, and me being able to relive that in my generation, it puts a whole different context of why are you here and what are you bringing with you and what are you handing over. Should children and grandchildren come to me, I can't show them the books I've written or the music that I've done. I can't show them the places in my passports, places I've traveled. I need to show them, here's your grandfather, here is your grandmother, here is your father, and we used to do this, we used to do this, so that they can also have an equal connection with the past they will never know, which is known by me. So I almost become manure. That's my name, by the way. Marara, Matlakala, the rubbish, the leaves that are falling from the ground, from the trees. And this is the manure for the next crop that it can grow on. So I'm Marara. If you take your ideas and you plant them on my manure, you may just harvest a good crop.
Thank you very much for giving me a new meaning of Matlakala.
Yeah.
Because there's always been this thing of Matlakala. It's such a bad name. And I grew up with a lot of Matlakalas. And it's so interesting to hear it from me to say, no, I am just that ground that all the leaves fall
I'm the
on,
rubbish.
and I'm that manure that sort of prepares the new generation to be born from.
And you never know when you get these names at a young age. You don't know. You don't want to know also how many other young boys had their teeth broken when they called me Matlakala Marara as a young boy. What did I say? But I think in my mature ages of 3, 4, 5 years ago now, I've actually started to accept. You knew me as Joshua all along, and this name was just in the background. But the day I woke up to discover, not all rubbish is negative. Rubbish is for biogas. Rubbish is manure. Rubbish, so I started to embrace. And when you receive this name at an early age, you actually don't know that this name it carries your DNA. You're Sibusiso. So you spend your whole life trying to find out in what way do I become a Sibusiso.
Ngiyabonga kakhulu, Bishop.
Thank you. It's an ending story.
Ngizokubona soon, and nangokubona I'd actually like for you to sit down with Penuel. He's got a brand new show that's doing well. It's called the Penuel Show.
Okay.
So I'd like for you to have a similar one, but with him, yourselves, and then I think we need a part 2 of the last one that we had all three of us.
Yes. Yeah.
After you sit down with him, let's have a part 2 in a couple whenever you are in the country again.
Yeah.
When are you coming back?
I'm leaving for Zim tomorrow.
Okay.
I should be back in town by next week, Wednesday, Thursday. Okay. But I'll give you a shout before I leave.
Yeah, but we'll plan it with Penuel. Okay. It'll be really nice for you to. I'd love to. I always love.
You're doing
Penuel's
a good
mind.
job, Sbu. Don't give up. You're doing a fantastic job. Fantastic. Yeah, don't worry. You're doing well. Just keep on. Johnny Walker. Keep on walking.
Guys, love you so much. It's so great. Like I'm always excited and I can't contain myself. And today it was just a glass of wine over just on the table. And it was not even a planned episode. Ndona ngisesikhaleni. Aw, mina ngithi ngiyakloka ukuthi no ngisesikhaleni. But I'm only here for a day. I'm leaving tomorrow. And then I had to make emergency phone calls to see if we can get a production crew ready. And it's always nice that we can always count on our production crew. And then here came out another iconic episode on our platform, because the episode that we did together the last time, it's I think the top 2, if not the top 3 biggest on the platform. This one will undoubtedly be also over time. And it's always great to learn from him and the wisdom. And those numbers show us how hungry you guys are of knowledge. That's why I'd love for us to have another part 2 with Penuel. And I'd love for him to have another sit down with Penuel, because that's another platform that we're growing. And you guys do know that Penuel hosts and he drops episodes every Monday. So I'm looking forward to that one. So we'll communicate, and I'm looking forward to seeing you on another one. I think as he leaves now, he's going to Dr. JJ Tabana's platform and look forward to the Soweto TV episode. safe. And also for those who celebrate Good Friday, enjoy the rest of your weekend. Drive safely, guys. If you know to drive, and just have a great time. Enjoy yourselves. We love you guys. Okay. We love you. We love you.
We love you. We love you too, Buddha.
And thank you for the knowledge.
Thank you for representing.